Hello, team. Thanks for tuning in to the Clemson Drone Podcast. Before we start the pod, I just want to take a quick minute to let you know about our brand new comprehensive 2-course online program. This is something we just launched in February and are super pumped about. It starts off with our 8-week UAS vocation course. In this class, you'll earn your Part 107 license, learn to fly with our simulator, create maps and models using Drone Deploy, and become a Level 1 thermographer. After that, we're excited to announce our brand new course called UAS Mission Administration. This class is designed for current pilots and UAS program leaders. Over 8 weeks, we'll cover enhanced general knowledge, advanced mission planning, and you'll create your organization's custom standard operating procedure manual using our cutting-edge AI tools. At the end of the course, you'll earn AUVSI's Level 1, 2, and 3 Trusted Operator certifications. Check it all out at clemsondrone.com. Now, back to the pod. Welcome to the Clemson Drone Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Burgett from Clemson University. Join me as I dive into the world of drone technology and explore its impact through the eyes of industry leaders. Hear how drone technology directly supports public agencies, private companies, and entrepreneurs from those leading the innovation. If you're a seasoned UAS program manager or just getting into the game, this is a place to learn from the best to help your program soar to new heights. Make sure you subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a single episode of the Clemson Drone Podcast. At Clemson Drone, the sky is not the limit, it's just the beginning. All right, team, welcome back to another episode of the Clemson Drone Podcast. I am your host, Joe Burgett with Clemson University. Last episode, we had a conversation with Ethan Miller, who is a Blue Nose franchise owner. This week, I'm excited to have Matt Stacker with us, who is another Blue Nose franchise owner and the founder of Jigsaw Innovations. Matt brings a fascinating background to the drone space. He's a retired Army colonel with over 33 years of service. He also served in the federal government, leading operations all over the world, working extensively in acquisitions and planning. He has a degree in geography and security management and a deep appreciation for how GIS can support mission execution. His company provides aerial imaging, precision mapping, inspection, and agricultural services throughout the eastern Missouri area. Matt, it is great to have you on the show. Welcome, my friend.
Good morning, Joe, and thank you for the opportunity to come on the Clemson podcast and represent the Blue Nose brand, kind of share my experiences as a new entrant into this exciting space that is just rapidly evolving, and maybe we can inspire some other people to join the drone space and see what more we can create.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely echo all that. It's rapidly evolving. I mean, sometimes it's hard to justify buying equipment, knowing that if you blink 3 times, new equipment is out there that's even better. So I totally hear you there. We're going to talk about your company and all of that and kind of get into some specifics. But before we get there, let's get a kind of a feel for who you are. Can you tell us a little about yourself? Did you grow up? And how did you get into the drone space? Maybe just, from a high level, how did you get to here?
All right, Joe. So, about me, first and foremost, family and husband. I'm a great uncle to 40 nieces and nephews, so big family. And I also like to give back to the community, coaching youth sports and veteran organizations. I grew up in the St. Louis area, and then obviously being in the Army, I moved away for a little while, but then came back home for kind of our final chapter. And I've always been intrigued by drones. We obviously use them in the military, and then I had some experience flying and crashing the cheap drones.
Right.
They're a little harder to fly. Right. But I came back to, I wanted to be self-employed and build something. I also knew I wanted to be outside. Right. So it seemed like a kind of a natural space to bring together self-employment, being outside, and then, leveraging some of the experience that I had over those 30 years in the Department of Defense.
Yeah, it makes tons of sense. And I remember reading your bio, and I think you said something along the lines of like 30 nieces and nephews, 10 great nieces and nephew. And then the first time I read that, I was like, 10 great nieces. Well, why aren't the other 20 great? I'm like, it's a generational thing. Okay, I got you. Well, so at the top of
Yeah.
the call, I talked, I said you had two companies, right? So Jigsaw Innovations and Blue Nose. Let's kind of unpack those. What are they? And then maybe explore, why you organize it that way.
All right, Joe. So we started off with Jigsaw Innovations as an LLC, and that I actually used an attorney to set that up. And I'm glad I did because
Right.
there's some differences in state law.
Right.
And I would actually recommend anybody do that at the formative stage. And it also gives you a relationship with a business attorney that you may need someday for contracts.
Right.
But I really use that as my overall umbrella. And then as my wife and I may look at some other ventures, we can add that in there. And then we use that as the umbrella organization for our Blue Nose franchise. And we operate that under a doing business as construct. But it insulates all your personal assets from your business assets, which can be important if something goes wrong for liability.
Right.
protection.
No, that makes tons of sense. And anyone who does start a business, I mean, it doesn't take anything to start a sole proprietorship, but all of your assets are on the line. And, we try to do things safe and, all the good things we do, but weird things happen and you don't want your personal stuff on the dotted line if something bad were to happen.
Right. It's protecting your family.
Exactly. Protecting. It's not just assets, right? But it's your family and your family's assets and all that kind of good stuff and security. So, okay, understood that. That makes total sense. So let's turn to talk about Blue Nose. So what led you to pursue a franchise with them instead of just, well, you had already started a business, but why not just, operate as Jigsaw Innovations and just go that route?
Joe, as I said earlier, 30 years in the Department of Defense, that kind of tells you I'm not a spring chicken.
Right.
And so at this stage of my life, I looked at the franchise route as kind of paying tuition and not having to figure out everything on my own.
Okay.
So when I looked at Blue Nose, there's a lot of military connections, aviation connections within the franchise. So it was kind of a natural home. And when you look at some franchises, they're very strict. And Blue Nose is a little bit flexible in terms of you don't have to be 60 hours a week at it. So they have a little bit more flexible model, which helped. But, it's the people, the experience, the community, the network, and that's kind of what brought me home to Blue Nose as a natural home.
Yeah, and I mentioned I had talked with Ethan Miller, who's again another franchise owner, and he used an expression which I told him I was going to steal, but business in a box. Would you kind of agree that that's kind of an advantage of having a franchise? Is it's a business in a box ready to go?
I do. The people that come before you and that built the franchise and the other franchisees, you can learn from their lessons and not have to learn the hard way and make your own mistakes. So I think it really helps accelerate you towards success and, avoid some of the hard knocks along the way that comes with starting a business. Like I started one long time ago and I learned that lesson very well.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I get that. So I had talked to Tanner Harris a few weeks or so ago and learned about the various different ways that Blue Nose, like the corporate structure, supports franchise owners. But I'm kind of interested in hearing your perspective. What are some of the ways that you have found that being part of a franchise supports your business goals? You touched on a few of them, but maybe some specifics, like what really resonated with you? How did they help you?
So I think we look at it from a couple of different perspectives. There's a business process perspective, there's a people perspective, and a thing perspective. So when you join Blue Nose, you get access to training, you get access to an operations portal, which really helps streamline a lot of your business process, your compliance documentation, and it's all in a single a bundle, and you don't have to figure that out. You don't have to figure out all the software integration. It helps you again, like learn the easy way versus the hard way, and accelerate you. But a lot of it really is about the people, Joe. Within the franchise, there's people with all different kinds of experience. We have airline pilots, we have GIS scientists, we have people like me, military retirees. So we have very broad experience levels in the drone space. We have test engineers. So you get this knowledge of the drone space, and then also the verticals you want to operate in, whether it's agriculture or inspection, and people that have that experience you can lean on and learn from. We cover for each other. One of our other franchises is coming up to my location when I'm out of town next week.
Awesome.
So we have that built-in support for each other. Equipment we trade when we need a specific drone or a specific sensor, and we can borrow it from each other instead of having to go out and pay $10,000 for an Altum sensor that you need for 2 days.
Right.
That helps the bottom line a lot. And I think it's just it's an environment where you can learn and grow your business, and we all work together very well and support each other.
That's awesome. That's really amazing. So now I know that at the corporate level that there is some support, for, national accounts and shedding work to and feeding work to the individual franchise owners. But I'm interested in kind of hearing essentially how you win work, how you get work. And I'm assuming it's a combination of, again, being fed work from the corporate office, but then maybe things that you do locally, advertising, network, social media. So that's kind of what I want to kind of unpack with you is how is it that you win work?
So this is a great question, Joe. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how I wanted to operate my business up front. Mm-hmm. And I decided I wanted to stay in the business to business realm, kind of stay away from the retail side. Okay. And also, when you look at starting out, as many people will know, there's the aggregators, and you can get jobs from them for registering with them. So early on, I decided, and I've been in business less than a year, I decided to focus on aggregators. Okay. Because I wanted to keep my costs down, my advertising, marketing, all the overhead costs down. And I've been lucky. It's worked. Okay. I've gotten a pretty high volume of work from some aggregators, and I'm using that to build up my experience, build up my capital, pay off all my opening expenses. Right. And then sometime here in the near future, I want to shift to a direct sales model, and we're really building my marketing funnel with social media for that top of funnel awareness, and generating interest, and then moving clients probably in the areas I want to work in. I'm looking at, there's a lot of quarries where I live, and so I want to, and that's going to be a direct marketing, sales, put on your hard hat, go in the quarry, talk to people, figure out what their pain points are, and then propose value to them from the drone, from a cost, safety, no shutdown, all those perspectives that you can do. So kind of to say, early on, I've focused on the aggregator space to get the work and the experience. And then I will move into more of the direct sales, in addition to the work that Blue Nose Corporate provides through their national accounts and the national marketing campaigns that support us with leads.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I've suggested that too, using those type of drone for service providers, low cost to get in there. You join a network. You're a contract employee. You already have the equipment. So why not, honestly? So it makes a ton. I guess you could always say no to jobs, right? But it's a great way of bringing some work in.
And that's a great point, Joe, to say that you can say no to jobs. I've turned down a couple contracts because I looked at them, I costed them out. Either they wanted a level of service that would impede other customers by being on call, or their pay. And I think in the industry, we are going to see a commoditization of the aggregator space, where you're just not making as much per flight as you used to. And you have to go into those higher value products to survive as the industry evolves. Yeah. But it's a great place to start. And you'll be able to say, well, now I have 250 paid commercial missions. And that is a validator statement when you're going in versus saying, oh, I'm new at this.
Right. And not just that. I mean, even if when you're first starting out, the benefit to you isn't always in dollars, right? Yes, the resume, like you just said, I got 250 jobs that I've done, but I've also got 250 jobs of experience and all the things that could go wrong. It's like anything else that, and Tanner actually made this point that like when you do something the first time, it takes a whole lot of time. But then the second time, it doesn't take as much time. And then the third time, you're starting developing your own systems and processes, which I know is a strength for Blue Nose, but internally for your own, business, that seems like a super good way of doing it. Let me ask you now and dive into a little bit more about the missions that you fly. So, and I mentioned a couple of them at the top of the call. Do you have a typical mission? Like what type of, if you do, what is your typical mission?
The primary work I've done so far is working in the construction progress space and learn how to set ground control points
Mm-hmm.
and then fly the RTK missions
Okay.
for a couple different clients. So that's my primary. And what's nice about that is it's repeatable work. You've done all your flight planning, everything. So you just have to update it. And then every week, every other week, every month, you go out and you refly it until the project is done. So
Right.
it provides that, predictable income stream, which is nice. But then, like you talked about, as you move across the learning curve, every time I go, it seems to take a little bit less time almost because you know how to set it up.
Mm-hmm.
You've really worked out your processes and your flow,
Mm-hmm.
and then as you encounter issues, you learn how to overcome them, and it takes you less time to overcome them each time. So I definitely agree with Tanner on that point.
Yeah, it makes sense when you're on a construction site too, because if it's, yes, the construction project is going to evolve as the building is built, but if you've been out there, well, the first time you're going to probably spend some time learning where to set up, where's a good place to launch from. And
Right.
then the second time, well, you don't have to figure that out unless something's changed. And the third time they're expecting you. Or the first time you might have to spend 20 minutes with the superintendent. By the third or fourth time, it's just kind of a tip of the hard hat and he knows what you're doing and you know where to go and you have that comfort level.
Right. And it evolves as the project goes. You're not, in the beginning, you're dodging bulldozers as they're doing the earthwork and then cranes. And then, it's kind of fun to see a project come from dirt all the way to finish it as well.
Well, so in another life, I was a general contractor and I used to build big work. So that is music to my ears and I can attest to it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that answer about your most typical job. I think you had mentioned you had done some agricultural work. What did that look and feel like?
So Joe, actually, we haven't started that yet. We just signed a contract and we're in the process of hiring a pilot to cover that for the season. We're going to be operating up in northeast Missouri, doing corn and soybean, flying with a multispectral drone and supporting a company up there. So, it's kind of another thing as we talk about. The other thing we're expanding into right now is the communication tower inspections with RTK.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the other reason to go the aggregator route a little bit in the beginning is because it gives you an opportunity to fly a lot of different mission profiles and different types of clients and see what really resonates with you, either personally or where you kind of want your niche to be.
Right.
Tanner talks about riches and niches.
Oh, yeah.
And he's right, because your equipment cost and maintenance and insurance and everything, they go up so much if you try to be too broad.
Right.
And I think you're much better off selecting a couple aspects of the industry and focusing on those to really optimize how you approach it, your marketing, your experience, your mission counts, everything.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And when you stay in that niche too, you develop a reputation. So, an earned reputation where you have the experience. So you are legitimately better at that and you do that work faster, not at a sacrifice of quality, but because you know what you're doing and you just know what to do, you know where to look, you know what if there's a problem, it's the 80-20 rule, right? If there's a problem, then there's an 80% chance it's this thing, right? And all those efficiencies, again, build your reputation and makes you more profitable and better for your clients. So I totally get that. So, you mentioned multispectral, and I'm assuming, for the agriculture side, I'm assuming that's for the plant health and some of the optimizations there. What kind of, and again, you had also talked about starting a company and keeping your capital to a reasonable expense. If someone were to come to you looking to start a drone business, what kind of equipment would you recommend they start off with?
A few months ago, I had a pretty solid answer.
Oh, boy.
I think right now, with all the country of origin discussions, it's a little bit tougher answer with the political aspects on that. Personally, I am flying DJI equipment right now. I think it provides a high quality capability at a good price. Right. Somebody's wanting to try to win, state or federal government contracts. Obviously, they're going to have to go with a U.S. made blue ballistic capability. I think the biggest thing is to really look at how much quality do you need for what you're
Right.
doing, and optimize that, and don't overbuy in the beginning.
Smart.
Don't, what did I say the other day? I hope it works money.
Right.
Or I hope the business comes
Right.
money. Just buy what you need for what you're actually doing up front.
Yeah.
Get it paid off, build up your capital, and then see where you really want to take your company before you start climbing the ladder into some of the higher end equipment.
Yeah, no, that makes tons of sense. So something I often tell people, because I get that question, what should I buy? Is this a good drone? Whatever. My boilerplate answer to that is a drone is a tool. So you need to identify the task to know what kind of tool is going to be the best for that. And to your point, if you're just taking, real estate images, well, that's a certain kind of drone. That's a pretty low cost point. If you're doing something that might be like, where you're looking at agriculture or like pet rescue type of thing, that might require a thermal drone, or some of those tower inspections you were talking about, and requires a high zoom because you can't fly near the EM fields. That requires, a different drone. So, I get that. I have a lot, man, I could spend an hour talking about my thoughts on the potential drone ban or point of origin drone ban. But I won't go that way, except to say that I think that's advantage of being part of like a Blue Nose group or a franchise group. You had mentioned before that you share equipment with other franchise owners. A Skydio X10, that's a $30,000+ aircraft. You got to win some work to pay for that. But if you share it, maybe that becomes a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I was looking at some different equipment for this year and decided not to go the higher out. We costed everything out. We looked at what the pay was for the higher end equipment and what the pay was for the lower end equipment.
Yep.
And based on not having to put out the capital, we're actually doing better with going just with the enterprise grade equipment.
Right. Well, so let me ask you one kind of final question here as we kind of wrap things up here. So let's just say one of your nieces or nephews come up to you. And again, I know you got 1 million of those, maybe not 1 million, 30 plus or whatever. Good ones, great ones, and everything in between. Right?
All great.
all great nephews, nieces and nephews. But let's just assume one of them came up to you and they say, look, Uncle Matt, I'm looking to get into the drone space and I want to start a drone business. And I'll caveat by saying, that like conceptually, there's not some kind of obvious factor that makes starting a business just, unwise, right? Maybe they're not in the right, stage of their life. Maybe they haven't gained that maturity level to own a business. Let's set all of that aside. Like conceptually, starting a business is not, unilaterally unwise for them. What would you advise them? Like, what would be the steps that you would tell them to say, okay, I get you. Do X, Y, Z or ABC or 1, 2, 3 steps to start a business?
So the first thing I would advise them to do is to really look at the marketplace where they are and see if it's saturated. Look at where the opportunities to create value for your customers are. And then I would also advise them on a financial side to really look at, as you start a business, income isn't guaranteed,
right?
Especially up front. So are you set up to be able to have the wherewithal to not take money out of the business for maybe 6 months to a year as you grow it. And obviously I would tell them, to work with an attorney to set up the business structure to make sure everything is compliant at the state, federal level, and also to protect, their family.
Right, sure.
And then I would also advise them to really think about what are their goals? What type of work do you want to do? Do you want to be out in the mud, setting ground control? Or in all different types of weather, or do you really want to focus on, the creative side, on the video production side, or do you want to be more on the technical side? So really, I think when you actually start the business, you're probably already 50 to 75% of the way there, because if you've planned ahead, you've really thought about it, what's your strategy, what are your goals, how are you going to do all your different activities, and then if it was my niece or nephew, I might say, hey, do you want to be a partner?
Right. Yeah. I mean, to your point, there's pros and cons with partnerships, right? And definitely pros and cons with partners and families, and being in the family, but there certainly is value to having somebody to bounce ideas off of, share the work. If you get sick or go out of town for vacation, having somebody that can help out. I get that.
Yeah, being a business owner, especially and a sole business owner, you don't get a lot of time off, and you're kind of always on to some degree, and you really have to have some discipline to keep it from being all consuming,
Mhm.
and then really thinking forward about when do you get your time off, how do you schedule that, how do you get coverage,
Mhm.
do you want employees, do you only want subcontractors? There's a lot of aspects from the business planning side. And I would also tell them, I said, you're starting a business. You're not a drone pilot. You're a business owner first,
Right.
and you have to run it as a
Right.
business. The drone pilot and that's your product, but you're a business owner. You have to have that mindset up front.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I really appreciate you sharing that insight with us. Matt, I think we will leave it there. I can't thank you enough for being on the show and kind of talking through your experience, your journey, and providing your advice to our group.
Yeah, Joe, again, thank you for having me on and allowing me to participate today and represent the Blue Nose brand.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate that. We will be back again here shortly with the next episode. So thank you for tuning in. Thanks for listening to the Clemson Drone Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Learn more about our online training offerings by going to clemsondrone.com. Thanks again. And remember, at Clemson Drone, the sky is not the limit. It's just the beginning. Thank you for listening to the Clemson Drone Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star rating and write a review. I'm told this makes a big difference in the algorithms used to recommend the podcast to others. Thank you.